So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our webinar this afternoon with our main sponsor, Elytraa. And we welcome you and thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedules to spend the next hour with us and our excellent speakers that we've got lined up. Now, I don't know about you, but the world seems to be gagging to get back to some form of normality. And certainly that for me means spending a fair bit of my life in and around hotels. So as the country gets ready to open up, and the hospitality industry takes a big deep breath, it's vital to actually get and understand your role in kickstarting the economy and bringing back some semblance of normality. So what we want to talk about this afternoon is the role that hoteliers will have to play in that to ensure that their businesses are really properly COVID safe. And will be asking themselves the question, how do I make my guests feel confident and comfortable that my hotel and my business is ready to receive them? So the purpose of this afternoon's webinar is to find the answers to those questions and to give you some clear and specific ideas on how to prepare and reopen and stay open. As I said, my name's Steve Whitten. I'm your host for the afternoon, and it's my absolute pleasure to bring to you three guests. The first of whom is Fiona Henriquez. She is a professor at the School of Health and Life Sciences. She's an expert in infectious diseases and has been working for the past year on coronavirus and the environment and the mitigation strategies that businesses will be needing, including the efficacy of face coverings and antimicrobials. I think I pronounced that right. Yeah, that. She will tell us a bit more when she comes on in a second. The second of our guests this afternoon is Alan Graham. He's the managing director of Elytraa Group, and that's a consultancy business focused on developing industry-leading products and solutions with particular expertise in both sanitisation and hygiene, as well as some other sectors like the automotive industry. Alan leads a small but very talented team from Elytraa's HQ in Stirling in sunny Scotland. And in case you ever get confused this afternoon, we have worn different coloured shirts just so that you can tell me and Alan apart. That is the...
Thanks, Dad.
And finally, our third esteemed guest this afternoon is Jordan Nugent. He's the Chief Operating Officer of LogIncident. They are a service as a software development business focused on digitized reporting solutions. Jordan has recently led a second build phase of the LogIncident product suite, and that allows for much greater flexibility and customization. So welcome, the three of you. And if I could ask perhaps each of you in turn to just give our audience a little bit of a flavour over and above what I've said there, just a minute or so about yourselves. Fiona, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, thanks very much, Steve. So delighted to be here, and I am, as Steve has pointed out, a professor with a specialism on infectious diseases. I have been working primarily with parasites, bacteria, viruses over my career, and I'm based at the University of the West of Scotland and within the School of Health and Life Sciences. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. And over to Alan.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Fiona. Pleased to be here as well. So, Steve, as you mentioned, MD of Elytraa Group, who are a consultancy business across a number of sectors. A particular area of expertise for us is within the sanitisation and hygiene space. Now, it's a sector that we've worked in products that we're familiar with way before COVID hit. So some products and solutions that were used in the automotive and industries prior to the COVID pandemic. And really as a business now, what we're trying to do with our partners is to try and educate and to raise awareness of the challenges and I guess around some of the misconceptions that now are present in the current climate.
Brilliant, thanks Alan. And for a big finish, Jordan.
Yes, guys. Yeah, so I spent 10 years in the corporate travel sector where I was looking at systems and staffing processes, trying to basically future-proof the business I was in, automate the systems and grow the business before we sold in 2017. Since then, I've been working at LogIncident, where really it's all about digitizing processes, reporting, and helping businesses really, capture and track that data.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you so much. Okay, well, so you've met our speakers. We are going to kick off the conversation with a few questions that we are preempting that you as the audience probably have. But if you have any questions as we go through, please feel free to put those in the Q&A section, and we will endeavour to pick them up. We do have some support going on in the background as well, so we can capture your questions and make sure that we get you involved in the conversation as we go through the webinar. We'll also have a couple of polls for you to get involved in as the afternoon goes on, just so you get a chance to input as well. So to kick us off then, if I can come to you first, Fiona, based on your experience and what we're here to talk about this afternoon, how do you think hoteliers should go about keeping staff and customers protected?
Sure. Thanks very much. The best way, really, I mean, what I have to say is that the guidelines that have been given to us, okay, by the government and have been advised through the scientific committee that advises them, really keep people, it's the best intention to keep people safe, keep staff safe. There are other measures that we can do on top of that, and just ensuring that the kind of visibility of cleaning regimes and making sure that cleaning regimes are constant and consistent. Really, we can't see viruses, we can't see bacteria, so it is difficult sometimes to know when we have cleaned something appropriately. Many cleaning regimes or guidelines that we see on different products give us an idea of perhaps what it might achieve under laboratory conditions, under strict conditions, but what does that mean then for the real world? And that's where we need to really understand a lot more about, from a scientific perspective, how microbes interact in specific environments. So it might mean that we need to talk about different or understand the environments that we are working in, to understand how effective those cleaning regimes can be. But yeah, so starting off with the guidelines, that's a really good point to start off with, and then understand, and then being very consistent with that approach as well. That's really important.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. So, I mean, Alan, based on that then, can hotels have basic cleaning sanitation protocols, or do you think they need to do more? I mean, is there a bit of a multi-level approach here?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I think it has to be. I think I guess there's a level of table stakes now, which is that basic cleaning, and that's because it's very, very difficult to deal with things on surfaces if the surfaces themselves are dirty. So there needs to be obviously basic level of cleanliness and hygiene. But I think as the situation is developed and will obviously continue to develop, that multi-level approach, the multi-layer approach, is really quite important for businesses. So for us looking at it, I think there's probably a 3 or maybe a 4-tier approach here, which hotels and in fact all businesses need to try and adopt. Basic cleaning, would be level 1 for sure. You then have surfaces and the potential of transmission of not just COVID-19. Everyone's focused on COVID-19 at the moment, and it's obviously a big issue. But there are lots of other germs and bacteria, and I guess Fiona may educate us a little bit more on that later on. So the transmission of any of these things from surfaces is a potential risk. So surfaces need to be tackled. But certainly in terms of the risk from COVID-19, airborne is the bigger risk on that front at the moment. So you need to have basic cleaning. You need to have some kind of 24/7 solution on surfaces. You need to have some kind of 24/7 solution from an airborne perspective. They obviously need to be at a level that it's at a safe level where people, guests, staff can be in that environment at any given time. And then I think you need to also consider to supplement those measures with some kind of almost like a deep clean type solution, like a purge almost, which would be maybe daily or nightly, or depending on the frequency of that environment. And that's something that's a bit more effective, something that would be used when the room or the environment is empty, and maybe at that frequency, maybe every, not so much every evening, maybe in a hotel environment, maybe between every guest or at some kind of frequency in rooms, maybe once a week, for example, to complement the other measures that are in place. And I think one of the other factors around that with businesses now, we see and we hear much more of an acceptance, if you like, that the virus will be controlled. It's not going away, but it will be controlled, as the year goes on and everyone hopefully, becomes vaccinated. But this hygiene society, if you like, that we now live in, that's not going to stop or go away. So lots of the measures that have been taking place and need to continue to take place will remain, if not forever, but certainly for the foreseeable future. So what we're seeing now from businesses and some of the rhetoric that's coming out now is very much around, okay, so we need to do these measures, but how sustainable are these measures moving forward? Are they responsible measures for us to be undertaking as a business? Are we comfortable with the level of chemical that we're using, or chemicals that we're maybe pumping into the air or applying on surfaces? Are the use of certain things allowing us to either use no chemicals with some chemical-free based solutions, or are there coatings, for example, that we can apply to surfaces that allow us to reduce the use of chemicals moving forward? So there's a lot of discussion now around that sustainability piece and that responsibility piece from businesses, which is where, the multi-level approach needs to be there. But it's not just quite the same. Last year, when supply very much outstripped demand of all of these solutions, businesses kind of just implemented whatever they could at that point. Whereas now the dust's settling about, there's a bit more thought, a bit more appreciation, if you like, of some of the surrounding challenges and issues, not just maybe in a respiratory type sense from people being exposed to chemicals, but in the wider environment as well, some of the issues that have arisen or could arise from that. So it's an interesting topic that, again, kind of probably migrates more into Fiona's area of expertise. But in terms of your initial question, Steve, absolutely. I think hotels and all businesses very much need now a multi-level approach to mitigate the risks moving forward.
So thanks, Alan. So Jordan, thinking of that then, I've spent my life in hotels, and one of the things that I probably would observe as a guest is the inconsistencies, perhaps. So is there anything that from, your side is the technology side, so is there anything that technology can do to help improve cleaning and sanitation processes?
Yeah, I think just building really on what Alan and Fiona said, I think what technology allows us to do is it allows us to take the solutions that Alan's been talking about there, and the constant and consistent cleaning protocols and regimes that Fiona said. So what we can do with technology is something as accessible as a smartphone or a tablet, is that we can set out kind of these standardized guidelines so that you've got certain mandatory areas that you have to select or add some pictures or say that you've completed. And you can run through this kind of checklist or whatever it may be, quite easily accessible quickly. And what that does is it kind of drives the individual, the user who's going through them processes to really think and say, yes, I have completed this, adding some evidence to that. What it also does is it kind of provides the reporting element at the other end. So you as a hotel manager or an owner can look at this cleaning regime and really delve down into the data to say, how long did it take us to do, maybe not as big of a deep clean, now that with COVID, I think safety cleaning protocols have become kind of a big thing. I think that's what it allows us to do, is actually to say, if we spend 5 more minutes doing this clean and making sure we've ticked all of these boxes, making sure all of the things that Fiona's mentioned and that Alan's mentioned have been put in practice, actually we can capture them and we can make people, guests, feel quite secure about these jobs having been done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Jordan. We've got a couple of questions come in already, which is amazing. People are getting stuck in, which is fantastic. So if I read these out, it could well be that we've got these covered as we go through the rest of the content, and or maybe in your top tips. And then I'll, but perhaps if not, maybe any of the panel would like to open up with this. So somebody's just said they're concerned with how customers will perceive quality of service with all these cleaning procedures and sanitisation stations happening constantly. And then someone else has said, you talk about surface and airborne, there has not been much about airborne in the guidelines, does it mean that cleaning surfaces is not enough? So does anyone want to pick that up, or is that going to be coming up? Any of those going to come up later on?
Yes, I can take maybe the first one there, Steve. I think to some degree. So there is this balance, isn't there, in all sectors between what we should and need to be doing from a hygiene and a sanitisation perspective, versus the impact on the experience. And that's the case in hotels and hospitality and retail and automotive and education and everywhere. And I think there is almost an element. This, Jordan, again, maybe touches on some of the points that you had there, but I think managing customer expectations here, is a big area with all of this, moving forward. And I think if you look at in a retail environment, say where we're all probably pretty familiar. 18 months ago, the concept of social distancing and masks and hand sanitisation and everything that's now just became the norm really was completely alien to the Western world, really, particularly masks and the wearing of masks. I think most people here would see someone wearing a mask and think, how rude, what do they not want to catch, not realising it was actually the other way around. So I think things that were very, very alien to us here are now just absolutely the norm. So I think, when it comes to the customer experience, managing the expectations is I think is part of that challenge. And there's no question that things are different. I know we use this kind of new normal terminology, and that there is unquestionably a new normal, and what that normal is. I think there's still a bit to go on that journey until things properly start to settle down. But I guess I think the part of that experience now and what customers and guests are looking for, that is part of that experience, is now the hygiene and the sanitisation protocols. And on I guess some of the booking sites now, so Expedia and Booking.com and these kind of things, it is very easy to tick all the boxes and say, as a hotel, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. But I think there is actually an opportunity here for businesses to elevate themselves above the crowd. So there's a basic level of kind of accepted protocol here that simply has to happen. But I think for hotels and all businesses to elevate themselves above that by looking at some of these other initiatives and measures that can be put in place, where it becomes very much complementary to that customer experience as well. So I think that the definition of customer experience is probably different now from how it was, a year ago or a couple of years ago as well. So I think for me, I think education and managing that the customer's expectation is a big part of that experience, and how that's developed moving and kind of managed moving forward.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Alan. Fiona, I'm sure you've probably got something on that as well, haven't you? Because that linked to your question earlier about following guidelines and stuff. Just to almost put you on the spot a little bit, but there was another question similar to that somebody's asked that said, with all disinfectants requiring a minimum of 3-minute contact or dwell time, why is that not being talked about? And it seems that spraying and praying is what seems to be happening. So what's your view on that and what we were talking about before?
Yeah, nice connection, really, because what I think is important to establish, in terms of just following on from Alan and that perception of constant cleaning, it's how that cleaning is happening. Of course, it's happened even to myself as a microbiologist who's been working in the field for 20 years. When somebody cleans down a seat that I've been sitting on in a common place, I'm thinking, oh gosh, you feel somewhat very conscientious very conscious about yourself, and so there is this kind of psychology behind that as well. But I think it is, as Alan said, it's coming into a norm now where there is an expectation. We are becoming much more aware of the things we touch, we breathe in, and we probably output as well. That is not, I think it will become, it's a good thing in a way to be able to understand our connection and connectivity with the environment around us, and to be aware of microorganisms that can cause disease. So, the whole wiping, blowing your nose into a tissue and throwing that away and then washing your hands, that now is becoming very much a big issue, whereas we were always taught that, but in reality, who did it? You'd stuff your tissue up your sleeve or something. So we are becoming a lot more reflective on everything that we do. So I think the constant thing is not just going to be a reflection on one area. Everybody's doing it, so it's becoming very much a kind of a level playing field from that perspective. The question about surface versus airborne is a real topical one at the moment, because now the evidence is being published to say that actually this virus is airborne. It is contained in very tiny droplets that do not necessarily come to Earth very rapidly. So they stay in the air for longer periods of time because they're very light, and it just takes some flow of air or something to push it out the way. And that's where the ventilation aspect comes in, because opening a window, for example, can increase ventilation in a room and therefore sort of push away the virus contaminated aerosols that we might be then breathing up. So ventilation has been a theme over the year. It's not been the biggest theme, but now there's a kind of shift in that evidence to say that we need to be very concerned with the air that we are breathing in. So opening windows or doing something to ventilate the air, opening a door where you feel a current coming in is very good practice and should be encouraged. Because we know that it's not just about surfaces anymore. Surfaces are very important. And to just kind of then touch a based on the fact that we need a 3-minute dwell time for certain disinfectants, yeah, that's true. Any chemical that is in touch with a microorganism, it's not instantaneous. They don't zap them out and eliminate them in some sort of Star Wars fashion. They need to sip in, because microorganisms are living creatures. They are covered in membranes that, like we are, they're our same cells. And if we spray something on our skin, it takes a while for it to seep in, doesn't it? Like even if we're putting a cream on, it takes a while for it to seep into our skin. So the same goes for microorganisms as well. We can't just spray something and then expect it to have an immediate effect. It needs to seep in so that it can actually kill that microorganism effectively. And so that's what the dwell time is. So something that I would do as a practice, I spray something, go away, do something else, and then come back and clean it. I'm not doing a spray and wipe situation. And that sometimes I have to say, going into a restaurant and seeing people just spray tables and wipe and clean, that's just taking crumbs away. Okay, so we need to be a bit more conscious about that aspect as well, and make sure that it is that deep cleaning that we can do every time. And it takes 3 minutes. It's not going to take an hour. It will just take that dwell time to do that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Fiona. Now, Jordan, I don't know if you've got a view on what we've been discussing, but there's another question that might link to something that is your area as well, which is, do you know of any hotel groups or service apartment businesses that you're aware of that are going above and beyond guidelines by using what systems they're using to do that? You may need to take a view on whether you name them, but yeah, what's your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, so I think going back to the original one about the perceived quality of service, I think, like Alan and Fiona both said, it is this kind of change in mentality. And I think from a technology point of view, is things like online booking gives people a lot more kind of immediate visual information there. So you do see, the tick boxes. You can quickly see what they have or they don't have. But if you look at something like, I don't know, vehicle safety ratings, or I think an even better comparison would be food hygiene. So I don't think, even 5-10 years ago, you would go and order a Chinese or an Indian or any takeaway and ask them what their food hygiene rating is. I don't remember seeing them in every window of every shop. Where I think now when you go on to things like Just Eat or Deliveroo, it's high, it's pride of place at the top, that their rating is, 5, and it is at the top. And I think people are a lot more geared now to have all of this information at their fingertips. Yeah, I think, with COVID and whatever else, there is kind of that perception of if you've got too much everywhere, it might look unclean. But I think nobody wants that. Everybody wants to have enough protection for the individuals, but actually when you walk into a hotel room, for me, you want to relax. So what you want is peace of mind that all of the hard work's already been done before you go in there.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Jordan. Sorry, Steve. I think just going back a little bit from that again, in the whole kind of experience and what needs to be done versus how that impacts certain things. Fiona, I think, am I right in saying that from a COVID-19 perspective, this is a disease that you get by breathing in, basically? Yeah, there is a risk from surfaces, but it's a disease that you get from breathing in. But when it comes to surfaces, yeah, you have the potential risk here, but there's lots of other risks, related risks around surfaces and bacteria. And am I right in thinking other things like maybe norovirus and just other germs that could maybe cause, sickness and these? That's where the bigger risk lies in surfaces, isn't it? You're on mute, Fiona.
The gardener just came. Not my gardener, by the way, next door. So the
sanitized.
the thing is that yes, it's about. I mean, right now we've obviously had these a kind of increased level of awareness of infectious disease because of COVID-19, but in reality, obviously, we've been living our whole existence, since with microorganisms and how they shape our lives and services and where they are and they breed, they live in unison with other microorganisms, and they develop what we call in science biofilms. So just very, very invisible films, really, where we see bacteria and viruses and fungi and other microorganisms all interact with each other. So it helps them survive for longer on these surfaces, and they don't dry out, or they're not exposed to the harsh conditions that we might think that we're providing them. So for example, in your bathroom, the mildew can build up, and that mildew, that pinky kind of grey milm that might end up like in the cracks of tiles in the most microscopic areas, that's full of microorganisms. Those are microorganisms that are breeding and becoming more and more abundant as they develop. So those surfaces are really important to clean and make sure that doesn't build up.
Okay, thanks. I think given that we've got a fair amount of interaction going on there with our audience, it'd probably be a good time to take a little bit of a poll. So we are going to get our support lady to launch this for us, so you can all participate and get stuck in. But the question is, how visible do you feel your COVID safety measures should be across the hotel? So you've got I don't know, a few seconds or so to take part in that. And then we'll give you some results.
Yeah, I think, Steve, this is quite an interesting topic, because I know certainly from discussions that we've had as a business with hotels, that there's been a real kind of polarized almost viewpoint on this sometimes, with probably most people saying, yeah, we want it to be visible, but I guess it depends a little bit on the definition of visible. Is it visible as in telling people that we're doing things, that things are in place, or is it visible as in we have some kind of machine or something else that's physically visible to people, or a dispenser of hand sanitizer and the like. And what we've seen kind of extremes of opinion on that, sometimes linked in with maybe the nature of the hotel, with the kind of higher end, more premium establishments probably looking for something a bit more discreet in terms of the actual delivery of those protocols, with maybe more kind of normal, that's the right word, hotel looking for something that is visible, again, to give that that comfort to guests and to visitors. But I think what we've also seen is a difference of opinion between maybe guest rooms, public areas, and then areas like bars, restaurants, or events, banqueting type spaces, where the discussion around things being a bit more discreet was absolutely from a guest room perspective. Public areas and event spaces, it was very much more about something visible that people could see, particularly around events and banqueting type scenarios, I guess, because, you know, in a room you've got maybe, you know, yourself or a family and the housekeeping in that guest room environment, whereas in an event space or in a restaurant you've got that mixing of people where, you know, again, that risk is bigger. So so it's an interesting topic. Yes, interesting just to see the results coming through here, Steve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, the result is 100% that people are saying that all, as visible as possible in all areas. So, yeah, excellent. So, Jordan, it's coming to you for a second then. What are the benefits to hotel owners and managers then? I mean, clearly, you know, there's a groundswell there of people saying that this, you know, this is beneficial to everyone. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted, really. I think so. Obviously, capturing the data as for us is the initial elements. You'd have the cleaners, whatever, working with, you know, your Fionas and the Allens to get this protocol right and make sure they're following the guidelines. And then I think it's twofold, really. It's one, it's capturing that data. Once you've got good structured data, which technology and mobile technology can help you achieve, then it's a lot easier to look at things like trend analysis to see what you're going to do with that. So data is it's good if you get it, and it's good if it's structured, but then actually it's only any use to you if you use it. So I think polls like we've just done there over, you know, does everybody want to see, you know, a sign to say your room's been cleaned, or, you know, get an email or a PDF coming through to your inbox to say, you know, your room's been cleaned for the day now. And I was speaking to somebody who said that actually there's a great element that could be there, which is in hotels, there seems to be a lot of, you know, knocking on the door. So the cleaners want to come in, you know, you're still in bed after a busy, big night out the night before.
What you mean, Jordan?
Not me, of course, but or you're going out, you know, you go to the pool, you want to come back and get ready before you go out for a meal, and the cleaners are in your room. So I think technology really on that point can be used massively to tell the cleaners that you are leaving the room and you're going for X amount of time. Then you can go out, they know you've gone, but equally it allows them to run through the protocols and automate the response to say your room has been cleaned, it's now ready. But equally, you then give them the peace of mind that we've done X, we've done Y, you know, here's a video, here's a picture of all of these things that we've done. So I think, you know, from a marketing point of view for a hotel, not only be able to say our protocols are excellent, we go above and beyond the guidelines, but what you're doing is you're giving that information to the guests. So you're really marketing yourself as not just a hotel where you can enjoy your stay, but, you know, it's clean, you don't have to worry about that. We've worried about that for you. Here's a certificate, or, you know, what it is to say this has been done.
Yeah.
And I think that really, for guests and hotel managers especially, I think that has a massive impact.
So an open question then for the whole panel. I'm guessing this might be more Fiona's area, but anyone can chip in on this one then, really. And Jordan, you've just touched on something there about, you know, the heavy night out. You're going to have come back and enjoyed the nice, soft, fluffy pillows. And the question is, so the pillows in hotels tend to be the forgotten, I can't quite work, was that fomite? F-O-M-I-T-E, is that right? New word on me. When it comes to staying clean, so what other hotels do, or what could hotels be doing going forward to address that one contact surface area you spend more time on during your stay? That's a good point, actually. So what can we do to, you know, be reassuring guests that pillows are clean?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Fabric is always the worst type of surface to keep clean, because obviously the fibers themselves are kind of connected to obviously being able to protect microorganisms. So even if you spray it with a chemical, or trying to, I mean, how do you know that that's clean? So we need to really be making sure that we are utilizing a protocol that gets into that fabric, and whether it be, you know, we've got now on the market steamers, foggers, all these types of technologies that can really get underneath the fabrics, that are perhaps the best way to clean fomites and fabric surfaces. So carpets, quilts, cushions, all these things that perhaps we tend to just give a bit of a shake to and change the pillowcases, you know, and that's good. But is it getting to the fabrics? And of course, we want to be sustainable as well. We're trying to balance this with a use and throw away kind of culture, because we don't want to be there anymore, because we've got a waste management problem as well. So, and we also have, we're very familiar with now that hotels put up, like, we want to reduce less water, because obviously that's not good for the planet either. So it's a real big balancing act, and a lot of things to think about. I fully appreciate that. But you know, if we do take in our decision making, we need to be using equipment and technologies that allow us to get into the deeper sides of these fabrics and surfaces.
And staying with you, Fiona, there's another question about how important is it to have independent verification of our cleanliness then? I mean, what's your view on that?
Independent verification. Well, yeah, I mean, it is important. I think it has to be part of, you know, the standards. You know, we work closely in my teaching side of my profession and educating students through environmental health and public health degrees, that we know that inspections take place, and we know that these things have to be monitored to protect us, to protect staff, to protect our customers, and everybody who might come into contact with certain areas. So that there is that way that the inspections need to happen, and we need to make sure that we're safe. And I think it should be viewed as to help, to support, because microbes can become resistant as well to different chemicals, and we need to make sure that then we're not seeing any resistant microbes. Because one thing that we saw before COVID that was starting to emerge was this phenomenon called antimicrobial resistance. And it's always been associated with the use of antibiotics. So they've always told you to finish an antibiotic off, always told you never to throw them in the bin or chuck them down the toilet. We've always taken them back to the pharmacy. But now this is becoming more important, even in the environment, with bleaches and chemicals that we utilize. We're starting to see this phenomenon. So we need to make sure that we are future-proofing our decisions as well, and make sure that we are keeping on top of what could become the next, hopefully not, but you know, the next big issue, like a pandemic, is going to be that phenomenon of antimicrobial resistance. And
what was that you just said about support, and what was the other thing?
Oh gosh, it needs to be support and making sure that we are future-proofing. So it's not to see something that, oh, we're inspecting or we're independently assessing your cleaning regime. It should be seen as something that we do together to make sure that we are supporting the continuation of this cleaning regime and preventing problems in public health and environmental health as well.
Yeah, that's what I was getting from that, was that's about support and being proactive rather than auditing and policing.
Yeah, it's best seen that way, because for that purpose, because we need buy-in, right? We need everybody to be vigilant about this. Not just the staff and the owners of hotels, but even our customers as well.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Now, turning to Alan, I have to say, listening to all of this, the salesman in me immediately thinks there's definitely a kind of marketing sort of aspect to this, and we've had a bit of a question on this. You know, should businesses, do you think, shout about it? Should they keep it subtle? And you know, what are the kind of marketing implications? Alan, if you want to kick us off with that, what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, so thanks, Steve. Yeah, so I think this is where in the model, this is where the operational side of the business, meets the marketing side of the business, and sometimes those departments aren't always quite aligned, quite so well. But I think when it comes to marketing, there's probably three key areas, if you like, around this. One is the brand, and just the perception of the brand around what they're doing as the brand of the hotel. There's the occupancy levels, which is the fundamental thing that we're trying to achieve here, and then there's the potential of the impact on pricing, and as in would guests pay a premium for additional measures to be in place in either their room, so they have an option to almost upgrade, like maybe in the past where you could pay a little bit more for a hypoallergenic room, for example. So would people pay a little bit more for, say, a slightly later check-in to give the hotel more than the normal 40 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe to turn that room around, or would guests pay a little bit more to have that just as a blanket measure across the hotel? So I think when it comes to marketing, there's a few different angles to approach and to come at here. I think what absolutely has to happen though is the guests and prospective guests must be made aware of what the measures are that are in place when it comes to sanitisation and hygiene. Whether they're physically visible or a bit more discreet in the hotel, I think is another thing. I think those messages need to be managed and need to be promoted to customers through the collateral from digital to me in the reception area as well within that hotel, because I think as Fiona said, it's incumbent upon the businesses and the hotels to lead from the front here, but equally, as you said, Fiona, everybody has to buy in to this, and everybody has to support this and be aware of the situation, because by raising that awareness, it further raises the awareness, if that makes sense. People see it and buy in more to the message and the protocols, that then helps to kick the whole push, if you like, further on. So I think the thing that has to happen, however that happens, whether it's digitally or in person, is that message needs to be communicated to customers right from the very get-go around managing their expectations. And maybe, for example, I don't know, maybe the check-in time is a little bit later, maybe it's half an hour later than normal or an hour later than normal, to give the hotel more chance to do what they need to do and maybe want to do. One of the questions earlier was asking around, surface versus airborne, and we're wiping down the surfaces, but is that not enough? Do we need to do more? And it appears that evidence is suggesting that yes, that is the case. There is now, I think, developing technology as the problem develops. The technology and the solutions develop as well. So there are now really, really effective surface coatings. There are really effective airborne solutions, chemical-free airborne solutions within ozone and things like this. There's the technology that Jordan's mentioned there. There is now the bedding which is coming through. Fiona as well now, the pillows, and because you have got you can obviously launder the items daily kind of thing, but again then you've got that whole sustainability argument. So this is all it's all connected in here. But I think in terms of marketing, fundamentally for me, it affects pricing, affects the brand of the hotel, and very much occupancy levels. So absolutely has to be something that's promoted and not hidden, I think, in my opinion, from customers, because it's in guests. This is the same across all. This isn't a hotel or a hospitality specific issue. This is a global pandemic, so everyone's is in the same position here, whether it's in an office or a store. So I think it needs to be positively communicated to customers, which will then help their buy-in with that moving forward, which ultimately helps the whole thing.
Brilliant. Okay, so conscious of time then, let's go to our next poll, which is to get some audience participation on that very subject, actually, Alan, about communicating with customers. So the poll is now open. How do you plan to communicate with your customers about COVID safety protocols? And this is a multi-choice poll, so you can mark all that apply. So if you get stuck into that, and then we'll come back to you, Fiona, in a second when we've got some results and pick that up as well. Because the other angle on this, I guess, while people are completing that is the protection for staff, isn't it? I mean, this is as much about going back into a workplace where you've got, throngs of people hopefully coming in and out on a daily basis. You're going to want to protect your teams at the same time, I suppose.
Definitely, and it's about reopening, but it's also about being able to stay open as well. As in, mitigating the risk and dealing with risk, if there are outbreaks. As you say, Steve, keeping the team happy and healthy and confident and comfortable, being back in that working environment. And we see this in any kind of retail type environment, a hospitality type environment, where for the last, on and off for the last year, it actually hasn't been that big of an issue because there's been nobody in hotels and car showrooms and shops and things like that. So numbers have been really, really sparse. So it hasn't been a big issue. So I think, where this issue starts to really develop is from, now onwards, as the restrictions start to ease, and all of a sudden there are people now back in these environments. It needs to be safe for their perspective, but yeah, absolutely the well-being of staff and safety of staff, should be absolute paramount. Businesses have a duty of care, have huge responsibilities to the team.
Indeed.
So that's absolutely up there for sure.
Yeah, indeed. Fiona, have you got a view on that, on keeping staff safe? Hope you still.
So,
not allowing them to talk, that would be one.
No, I just don't want the lawnmower to be in the background. So it is something that we've all got to be aware of, and education, I think, is really important. Now, my first thing of keeping staff safe in a hotel environment is the people that are most vulnerable are the ones that are going to be in customer contact, because obviously they're sharing the same airspace. And then, so obviously making sure that, and also now we've got touch screens and things happening in perhaps bigger hotel chains. Are they going to be safe when it comes to the cleaning regime? Because somebody's got to clean all of that as well. So it's then about being able to make that assessment to ensure that staff are going to be protected when they're doing that cleaning or when they're talking to somebody. And it feels like that what they've done is they've put a lot of guidelines have been saying, well, let's see, even if you go on the TV, there's these screens between staff and the customer doing your nails. You put your fingernails through a little portal. And that's all very well, but because we know that the virus is aerosolized. So how well, are we definitely blocking? Yes, we probably are blocking a substantial amount of virus from that direct contact. But we need to make sure that also that we don't become complacent. I think it's very, very easy to forget about the rules and forget about the guidelines, because we're sociable. We want to be with people. We want to be surrounded, and we want to be interacting with people. And I think hospitality is really where you want to be welcoming people into an environment and make them feel like a home-to-home place. So these are conversations, I think, that the staff need to share with employees, with and have that open way that when somebody feels uncomfortable with the way that perhaps, we've got these guidelines and they've been adhered to for a week, but we're starting to see a breakdown. So there needs to be a constant communication there and a constant reminder. And I'm not sure, how blindsided do we get to visual aids, right? That I'm a bit concerned about. I think there needs to be some psychology there, because we start to see a poster every day, keep your distance, keep your distance, keep your distance. And then it just becomes wallpaper, doesn't it? Yeah. So we need to be very vigilant about that. And in terms of practical measures, good education about the cleaning regimes, protecting washing hands. I know there's also this whole controversial side of washing hands, because, and this kind of ties into one of the questions that I'm seeing pop up on the Q&A, is there a method to really clean and sanitize 100%? Well, that's a big weighted question, because we don't want to clean everything. We kind of need microbes to be able to survive, because if we lived in a sterile environment, we would be subjected, or we would suffer more from allergies. So if we're cleaning our environment too much, then what's our immune system going to do? Mm-hmm. It creates allergies. So there's a real fine balance there. But in order, so washing hands all the time, even simple hot water is sufficient to clean away, like, you know, from your hands, I mean, because you're constantly wearing, constantly touching. So a blast under hot water just gets rid of most of things. So that's one way that we could start to educate people, right? So even if you're suffering from dry hands from soap and sanitizer, okay, maybe not, I'm not saying do it any less, but don't do it any more than what you should. And if you feel that you need to do something a bit more, then hot water really, and a clean towel. We don't change our towels often enough from that perspective. So we need to, so there's a lot of microbes that accumulate in damp towels as well. So, and I'm thinking more about staff, because we're always very clear about the room maintenance of bedrooms and areas like that. But your cleaning staff are probably using the same rag all day to clean a surface. Yeah. So we need to think about that as well.
And funnily enough, that was going to bring me on to the point similarly about to Jordan. You know, we talked about technology, and I can, you know, some of what you're talking about will probably need an investment in smartphones or iPads or whatever. What's your view on that? Because again, linked to what Fiona's just said, you can just imagine iPads being passed around the staff, you know, almost like an oily rag kind of thing. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously passing around anything isn't particularly good. I think one of the things now is that utilising technology that pretty much most people have, if not, you know, 90% of people have some form of smart device. So there is kind of two elements. You could have a station set up where you would have a cleaning thing next to it. I can imagine Fiona probably would, you know, that would then need to be cleaned twice as much as everything else. But as everyone does have a smart device, I think actually if you look at the benefits that come out of it, and I think looking at the staffing situation, is we work with a lot of large clients who have got, you know, hundreds of sites, thousands of employees, and they've managed to jump on, you know, COVID as an example, to actually notify when there has been an outbreak or somebody's caught it. So what they can do is they can use that data to say where they were, you know, over the time, who they were in contact with, you know, where this possibly could have spread. So if we take it that there potentially is going to be outbreaks, then what we can do is we can minimize them through technology, through things like smartphones, where you've got location settings, for example. You can pinpoint where anybody is at any point. So I think that, yes, there probably is some kind of, you know, technology is expensive to build. It's getting less so. But I think what companies like Log Instant do is that we build frameworks that people can customize around. So yes, I don't know whether it's a great idea for everyone to be passing around one iPad, but it's got to be better than passing around one bit of paper or, you know, a clipboard, I guess.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's just quickly look at these poll results, and then I'm going to come to each of you we started off with 60 seconds each, so I'm going to give you 60 seconds each in a sec to just literally tell us your top tips before we wrap up for the day, because we are rapidly heading towards the end of the webinar. So how do you plan to communicate with your customers? We've got customers can see it all during the inquiry. 75% on arrival, all relevant information is given verbally or as a leaflet or a poster, and customers can really easily communicate with staff about their complaints or request extra cleaning, and will be answered immediately. And we don't have some there saying they don't have anything in place as yet. So, okay, that's interesting. Some best practice being shared there. And watch out, because when I come back to staying in hotels, I'm the world's worst customer. I want fluffy pillows and the place disinfected. Just warning you. So let's come to each of you then. Let's have a quick top tip from each of you then as we come towards the end of the webinar. Fiona, what would be your top tip?
If I may, 2 top tips. One for staff, you know, and making sure that they understand why the cleaning is important, okay, and it's not just something that is routine, but that kind of conscious understanding of why it's important for sanitization, and so an education piece, and 2, really to check, and this is very practical, check the corners, check where you might not know, right? how many times I've gone into a room and checked a radiator and seen the dust, right? And those are the things that where microbes do accumulate and then get ventilated up through the heat of a radiator, for example.
Brilliant, Fiona. Thank you very much. Alan.
Yeah, I'll go for 2 as well then, since Fiona started. So I think
value all the way here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one for me, just picking up on something Fiona mentioned earlier on, is to be aware of fatigue around the protocols. And that can be 2 ways. That can be around the hygiene protocols, but also as everyone's focused on measures from a hygiene and a sanitisation perspective, we see from other sectors such as construction, where some people feel that the eyes came off the ball a little bit in other elements of health and safety as well. So I think to be very much aware of fatigue and how that's managed, and as you say, Fiona, does it just blur into the background as we move on here. I think that the other thing from my side would be to be aware of and to utilise the technology and some of the systems that are now available that were probably available prior to this, but maybe in a slightly different way and in a more accessible way. So that is some of the effective, the surface coatings, the airborne solutions, the full room solutions, the technology, as Jordan described as well. So to really utilise them as a business to make the process effective but also efficient, which is a big point for sure.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you, Alan. And Jordan, for a big finish again.
I'll just go for the one, but I think using technology, it can be a friend in business. I think that's the thing, is we all too often think about it as being, this Terminator AI coming to take all of our jobs. What it can actually do is it can help you automate, mundane processes and let you get on with running the business.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gents, I hope you've enjoyed the conversation this afternoon and this webinar has provided you with some value. The takeaways that I'm certainly have noted down are that if you don't see it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's clean or not clean. So there's some work to be done there maybe, and creating the culture to change, to understand that wiping things is not enough and we are all responsible for one another and the environment. So if there's no more questions, nothing else to add, ladies and gents, thank you so much indeed from each of our speakers, Fiona, Alan and Jordan. Thank you very much indeed. And we hope to bring you more fairly soon, I guess.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Guys.